What's up guys, Mr. Scanlon here, back for another video tutorial on Adobe After Effects, just getting you guys into the basics here. So last time we were talking a little bit about this blue layer here in the layer box. I told you guys to open up this arrow, open up the transform arrow too, and you'll see that this transform thing has a bunch of attributes applied to this layer here. And doing things to these attributes will cause it to do something up here. So I can scrub on this anchor point right here, which doesn't do a whole lot for me. Basically, it's just moving this layer around this anchor point right here. We don't want to do that right now, but I can also mess with the position. I can get positioning, just right. Maybe I want it like exactly halfway in the screen or something. I can do that with the positioning, get it more exact. I can scale this thing uniformly. If you remember, like earlier, I was like scaling it, but this isn't uniform scaling. It's like, I just made this a square when it was a rectangle before. With this percent thing, with the 100% thing here, I can scale this thing uniformly. So if I need it to be, the same ratio as it was, like, basically, what you guys might find is like you might get like a video or something that you import into After Effects, and it's like this big. And you're like, okay, I obviously need to size this down. You can go to the scaling here and uniformly scale it to what you need, so that way it doesn't look, deformed or something like that. And then there's this rotation thing right here. You can kind of rotate it around. I usually don't use this a whole lot, but for some effects and some different things, it is pretty helpful. And then there's this opacity thing here. And for those of you who don't know what opacity is, basically it just means how easily you can see through this layer here. Right now it's at 100%, which means I cannot see through the blue layer at all. But if I start bringing this thing down, you'll start to see that you can start seeing through the blue layer. By the time I get to 0, you can't see it at all, and it's completely blacked out. So let's turn that back up to 100 there. And you'll notice that I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do layer again, new solid, and make a new layer solid. We're going to go with a red this time. I know, it's St. Rita colors, don't harass me, but we do need something to very easily juxtapose this, and blue and red kind of do go well here. So we're going to take this red here, and you'll notice that as soon as I made this layer, it just imprinted red on top. So there's no blue anymore. It's just red. And the reason for that is because of the layers here. What is After Effects all about? What did I tell you in the last video? It's all about layers, okay? That's what you have to know. The camera is what you're, basically you're looking at the screen, that's your camera. If this layer is on top of this layer, you're only going to see the red, okay? That's just how it is. If you want to see the blue again, you can just click and drag this thing on top, and there it is back on top. For now, what I'm going to do is, actually before I do that, let me show you, if I open up the transform here, I can go to position and I can start moving this thing around over the blue. I can scale it on top of the blue. I can rotate it on top of the blue, and I can change the opacity on top of the blue. So watch what happens if I start turning down the opacity. You'll notice it gets to like kind of like purpley, and that's obviously because if you mix red and blue, it turns to purple. These are very light red and blue colors, so it's going to be like kind of like this light purple until I get a little bit more, let's see, like 40%. That's a little bit more like, what, violet or something like that? I don't know my purples, I'm sorry. And then if I go all the way to 0, it's just plain blue there. So let's bump that up to 100. I'm going to go ahead and scale this down. Like, let's actually kind of get like, I don't know. Let's like, I don't know, I'll put it like right here or something, just to give this example right here. So basically what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to drag, which one do I want to do it with? Yeah, I'm going to drag this like icon thing here onto this blue, okay, just like that. And you'll notice that this guy turned to the blue solid right here, basically signifying that this red layer is parented to this blue layer right here. So if I take this blue layer, let's open up the transform here, and I start moving the positioning around, you'll notice that the red follows it perfectly. It matches it exactly, so that way these things stick together. They never like move away at all. And that's pretty important if you're trying to keep things tracked properly. I can't even think of an example right now when you would use it, but believe me, it definitely comes up a lot. And if I were to remove that and start moving this thing around again, it's free from the parenting. Real quick, let's go ahead and let's actually talk about the timeline real quick here. So you'll notice if I take this time indicator and I start moving this around right now, nothing's happening at all. Actually, I'm going to bump this down to about 15 seconds and then just zoom in so we can deal with seconds right now. If you see like 1F, 2F, that's just like, that's 1 second, 2 second, 3 second. Um, you'll notice if I'm like moving this thing around right now, nothing's changing at all. Nothing's like moving really on screen. That's because I don't have any animation going on. What I can do, however, is I can start animating this by changing the keyframe. Okay. Now, what is this keyframe here? These are see these little stopwatches here? These are keyframes basically. If I go, if I start this thing at 0 seconds right here, if I start this timeline at 0 seconds, and I say, well, I'm trying to think of what I want to do. Let's do it with rotation. Sorry, let's bring this thing back in the middle. Let's click on this rotation stopwatch here. You'll notice that two things happened. Three things happened actually. It created this little thing right here. It blacked the stopwatch here, and then it also added this keyframe right here on the 0 second mark. If I move out to, let's go to like 5 seconds. So 5 seconds is pretty good. I'm going to, you'll notice like if I'm at 0 here, this thing's turned on. If I'm at 5 seconds or basically anywhere else, it's not turned on. That's because there's no keyframe right there. I'm going to hit keyframe here again. Okay, nothing's happened yet. Nothing's happened yet. But if I'm here, if I'm at 5 seconds, I can turn this thing, and we're just going to make it, we're going to go like 2 revolutions or something like that. That's fine. If I go back to 0 here, you'll notice it starts off back where it was before it started rotating. And that's because a keyframe does two things. Not does two things. It holds two things. A keyframe holds two pieces of memory. It holds time and it holds position, basically, or rotation, or whatever the attribute is, okay? So this keyframe is saying at 0 seconds, right here, make sure that the rotation is 0. And then at 5 seconds, this one is saying at 5 seconds, make sure the rotation is 2 rotations and 9 degrees or something like that. So if I hit play on this, you'll see that it's actually rotating over time until it gets to 5 seconds right there, and then it stops. So that's how you animate things in After Effects. All you got to do is set the keyframes, set a starting point and an ending point, and then whatever you want at the starting point, whatever you want at the ending point in terms of rotation, and the computer fills in the rest for you. It's smart enough to just know that it's supposed to do that for 5 seconds or whatever. Real quick, let me actually show you something kind of interesting. If I go here, let me actually bring this down real quick. If I go to turn on motion blur, and I'll turn on the red solid here. This might go slow at first. Hold on. You kind of see it's going slow right now, but you can kind of see there's like a little bit of an edge motion blur to it. Once this gets to 5 seconds, it's going to run again, and it'll run at full speed. So you can see that there's a motion blur on this. There's a motion blur on this animation right here, and it's pretty cool. It kind of makes things seem a little bit more realistic. Whereas if I don't have any motion blur on here, it just looks like it's rotating, and it kind of looks maybe a little cheap in some ways. That's just trying to show you guys that motion blur does have the effect to make things look a lot nicer. All right, so we covered a little bit about how animation works with the keyframes, and like I said, you can do that to anything. So I can have this thing like changing scale while it's also rotating, like maybe like that big or something like that. So if I start this over again, you notice it's like as it's rotating, it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and that's just because of like I'm changing two things at one time over this like time frame here. Another thing you might notice is why is it getting to the end here at 5 seconds and then starting over? It's because I moved this work area button, or I don't know what you want to call it, scroller or something, to 5 seconds instead of where it was. And oops, I messed it up. I'm just going to leave it at like 10 seconds or something again. Oops. So if I like went back to 5 seconds here and hit play, it'll just keep going until it gets to this point here and it'll restart. Alright, so that's just a little bit of animation here with the layers. We're running at 10 minutes at this point, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the video, and we will come back to this in the next video. See you then.